Single mom walked miles to work until a limo pulled up for her. The morning had a pale gray look that made Elena Hart feel already behind. She zipped her thrift coat, checked the cracked phone. 5:12 a.m. The bus was late again, so she started the 50-minute walk to Kensington Memorial Hospital. She tucked a granola bar into her pocket for her son, Noah, still asleep in their tiny studio, watched by Miss Dorsey next door. Elena mouthed the same prayer she used on hard days. Keep me steady, keep him safe. 2 blocks in, wind found every gap in her coat. A delivery truck threw a sheet of cold water over her shins. She winced, then laughed at herself for caring about dry socks when the real storm lived on the pediatric floor. Short staff, 2 new patients, and Mr. Dalton in 412, who recycled the same joke like a ritual. She kept walking and counted windows that held light like stubborn lanterns. She passed a boutique already awake. In the glass, she barely recognized herself. Rough bun, careful eyes, a jaw set by promises. At 29, she felt older, but the plan did not bend. Finish the LPN, save, bridge to RN, and pry open a better life with the patience she used to unknot IV tubing. Fog sat low over the river, like breath on a mirror. A jogger nodded. Elena nodded back and tried not to miss running. Before schedules turned into double shifts and shoes became obligation. Her phone buzzed a freeze warning she could not obey. She stuffed her hands deeper into the sleeves and moved faster. At 10th Street, a sedan rolled the stop and braked inches from her knee. The driver lifted a hand in apology. She waved him on and saved her breath for places it mattered. Scared parents, tired kids, and Noah when he asked if life would always feel like this. "We're not stuck," she told him. "We're climbing." Habit made her check 3 things at the light: badge, bus pass she rarely caught in time, and the permission slip for Noah's field trip she still needed to sign and pay for. $8 might as well have been 80. Ask for another shift, her fear said. Her body answered with the memory of last week's dizzy spell. The hospital rose ahead, a rectangle of light against gray. Under the staff awning, she pressed her palm to cold metal and did the ritual she invented after Noah was born. Give the good things the first say. Noah's soft snore when he fell asleep reading. Ms. Dorsey's notes folded small. Nurses who shared coffee like weather alerts. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed. The guard waved without looking up. Pediatrics smelled like soap, apple juice, and brave drawings. Elena clocked in, tied her hair tighter, and entered the rhythm. Vitals, med checks, family updates, chart corrections. Almost like music, the kind you notice only when it stops. In 417, 5-year-old Bree hugged a stuffed fox and asked if Elena was a superhero. Elena said no, made the fox dance, and Bree laughed. In 412, Mr. Dalton told his joke. She beat him to the punchline. A mother asked for rest. Elena promised to wake her. Near noon, a text from the school office. Noah forgot his lunch. The cafeteria would let him charge again. Another line on a bill she could not see the end of. She typed thank you and swallowed the small stone in her throat. She had learned to move with stones. The afternoon stretched. A new admit cried until the bubble machine worked slow magic. Elena coaxed a smile with a paper crown and a whispered pact. We can do hard things, but not alone. By 5, her feet throbbed, but the alarms were quiet, which counted as good. She started home at dusk, sleet ticking against the sidewalk like impatient fingers. She thought about cutting through the park, then chose the lit streets because promises to Noah were not negotiable. Near the old movie theater, headlights carved toward the curb, and settled. A long black limo idled where buses usually gasped. The window slid down. A driver in a cap leaned toward the cold. "Ms. Hart?" he asked. Elena stopped. People did not say her last name outside a waiting room. People did not lean out of warm cars to ask after her at all. "Yes," she said, because she could not think of a reason to deny it. The driver glanced at a card. "I've been asked to bring you downtown. You're expected." She gave a small laugh that sounded like disbelief learning how to breathe. "I think you have the wrong person." "I was told you would say that," he replied. "And to add that your neighbor, Ms. Dorsey, has Noah, and he's had dinner. He's safe." Heat rose behind her ribs like a pocket of sunrise. She stepped closer to the warm window. "Who sent you?" "A friend who believes you are overdue for good news." She looked at her soaked shoes, then at the door to the hard night she had planned. The limo door opened without drama. The interior smelled like leather and the kind of clean that never worried about rent. She hesitated just long enough to remember her rule about choosing which voice got the first say. The city seemed to hold its breath. "Okay," she said softly, "let's see where this goes." The limo's hum felt unreal, like she had stepped out of the world she knew and into a quieter one built of whispers and warm air. Elena sat with her hands folded tight on her lap, as if they might leave without her if she relaxed. The city moved by in streaks of light and shadows, street lamps like distant moons, windows glowing with other people's evenings. The driver said nothing. Neither did she, afraid sound might break whatever delicate spell had lifted her from the sidewalk. They passed streets she had never walked because her life always curved around them like water around stone. Sleek restaurants gleamed behind glass. People laughed over candles. Elena stared, curious how it felt to eat without measuring price against hours of her own fatigue. When she was a child, her mother once said, "Some lives are like glass bridges. They look magical from below, but the steps are narrow and the fall is far." Elena wondered if this was what she meant. After 30 silent minutes, the car slowed. They pulled up before a tall building edged in soft gold light. The sign read, "Hartwell Foundation." The driver stepped out and opened her door as though she were someone who expected that. Cold air swept in, crisp and smelling faintly of snow and cinnamon. She rose carefully, half afraid the ground would refuse her weight. Her legs tingled with disbelief as she followed the driver through glass doors into a lobby that felt like a cathedral to possibility. Vaulted ceiling, polished stone floors, art glowing against soft walls. "This way, Miss Hart," the driver said, as though she belonged here. An elevator whispered her up to the 23rd floor. The doors opened to a hallway lined with black and white photographs of children holding books, bicycles, paintbrushes, their faces mid-laugh. Her pulse stumbled. She thought of Noah tracing stories with his fingertip, of how he asked if some people just started lucky. She had said no. Luck was something you could grow, like plants in sidewalk cracks. She prayed she had not lied. The driver stopped at double doors of pale oak. "He's waiting for you." "Who?" Her voice felt small. The driver smiled politely. "You'll see." The doors opened into a room like a dream assembled from warm wood, wide windows, and the low glow of lamps. At the far end, a man stood with his back to her, looking out at the city. He turned when she stepped inside. Early 40s, maybe. Sharp suit but undone tie. Sleeves rolled to forearms like he had been working instead of posing. His eyes found hers and held, not appraising but steady, like he had been expecting her for a long time. "Elena Hart," he said softly. "I'm Marcus Hartwell." The name chimed faintly from the building's sign, from scattered news she had skimmed about local philanthropists she assumed lived on another planet. She nodded, trying to make her voice work. "Why am I here?" Marcus gestured to a chair near the fireplace. "Because people like you keep this world standing, and most of the world never notices." She didn't sit. "You don't know me. I know you walk 5 miles each way to work at Kensington Memorial. I know you keep the pediatric wing afloat when it should sink. I know your son draws space rockets on recycled envelopes and calls you his hero." Her breath hitched. "How? Ms. Dorsey is very proud of you," Marcus said gently. "She's part of our community network. She nominated you for our Quiet Heroes program." Elena blinked. "That's not real." "Oh, it's very real," Marcus said, smiling just enough to look human. "We find people who keep giving, even when they have nothing left to spare. Then, we give them something back." "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you didn't wait for the world to get softer before you became kind," he said. For a moment, the fire crackle filled all the space between them. She felt like someone had looked straight through the noise of her life and seen the part she never spoke of, because words always bent under it. She lowered herself slowly into the chair, as though she might shatter the moment by moving too fast. Marcus handed her a folder. Inside, an offer letter, full tuition for her RN bridge, a living stipend, guaranteed placement afterward. She stared until the words blurred. "I don't understand," she said. "Then don't," Marcus replied. "Just accept. This is not charity. This is investment. In you, in Noah, in everyone you'll go on to help." Her hands trembled as she closed the folder. The room tilted like the ground was offering itself for once instead of slipping away. "I don't know if I can do this." "You already are," Marcus said. Tears came quiet and surprised, like guests who had missed their cue. She wiped them with her sleeve. "How do I even say thank you?" "You don't," Marcus said. "You live well, that's enough." When she stepped back into the limo, the folder hugged against her chest. The city lights seemed brighter, like someone had scrubbed them clean. For the first time in years, the future did not feel like an enemy she had to outrun. It felt like a door quietly unlocking. As the car glided through the streets, Elena thought of Noah's laugh, the way he once said the stars probably looked down at Earth and picked favorites. She hoped tomorrow he would look at her and see what it looked like when the universe picked back. The limo slipped through the sleeping city like a secret, and Elena felt both too big and too small inside it. The folder lay on her lap, heavier than paper had any right to be. Every block they passed felt like it belonged to someone else's story. And yet here she was, borrowed into it. She pictured Noah's face when she told him. Or maybe she wouldn't tell him yet. Maybe she would just let him notice when things began to change. Real shoes without holes. Mornings without her rushing out the door like an apology. Maybe the surprise would be part of the gift. The car slowed, but they weren't at her building. They turned onto a quieter street lined with brownstones and lanterns glowing on porches. The driver caught her eye in the rear view. "One more stop," he said. She frowned softly. "I thought this was over." "Almost," he replied. "But someone asked me to take you here." Her hands tightened around the folder. The limo stopped in front of a narrow townhouse, painted soft blue, light glowing behind the curtains like something warm was waiting. The driver stepped out, opened her door, and handed her a small envelope. It had her name written in looping, careful handwriting. No return address, just a single pressed wildflower tucked under the flap. Her voice felt thin. "Who left this?" He didn't say. The driver inclined his head, but I'll wait. She climbed the stone steps. The cold bit her fingers through her gloves. She opened the envelope with care, like it might be fragile. Inside was a note on thick cream paper. Elena, I've seen you every morning walking past my shop before dawn. You don't know me, but you reminded me what perseverance looks like. My wife fought cancer here 3 years ago. Nurses like you kept her whole even when her body wasn't. After she passed, I stopped seeing the world as good. Then I saw you. I saw how you walked, even when it hurt. You brought some of that goodness back. This building was hers. It's been empty since. It should be full again. Consider it a start. No rent, just live. There was no signature. Elena read it twice, then a third time, her vision swimming. She stepped back and looked at the quiet house. She could almost hear Noah's laughter inside, bouncing down the stairs. Her throat tightened, not with disbelief now, but with the slow flood of something she had almost forgotten how to hold. Possibility. She walked back down to the limo. The driver met her eyes, gentle. Ready to go home? I think, she said. I just found a new one. They returned to her apartment, only long enough for her to pick up Noah. Mrs. Dorsey had him curled on her couch, socks mismatched, clutching the paper solar system he had made that day. He blinked awake, saw his mother, and smiled like sunlight had been waiting behind his teeth. Hey, Starboy, she whispered, kneeling. Want to see something? He yawned hugely. Is it ice cream? Better. 10 minutes later, they stood on the porch of the soft blue townhouse. Noah's eyes went wide. Whose house is this? Ours, she said, and the word almost cracked her voice. She unlocked the door with the key tucked in the note. Inside smelled faintly of cedar and paint. Hardwood floors gleamed under their socks. A staircase curved gently upward. Banister smooth under her palm. Noah raced from room to room, announcing discoveries like an explorer. This one has 2 windows, and this one echoes. Can I paint planets on the ceiling? We'll see, she said, laughing quietly. She followed him to the kitchen, where he found a folded piece of paper on the counter. In the same handwriting as the note, it read, Every story deserves a safe place to begin again. ... Noah didn't understand the words fully, but he seemed to feel their weight. He wrapped his arms around her waist. Does this mean we don't have to move again? It means, she said softly, we finally get to stay. Later, after Noah fell asleep curled under a borrowed quilt in what would be his new room, Elena sat on the floor in the living room. Moonlight striped the walls. The folder from Marcus lay open beside her. Tuition, stipend, safety. She pressed her palms to the cool wood. The silence here was different from the silence of her old apartment. That one had felt like absence. This felt like peace catching its breath. Her phone buzzed softly. A new message from an unknown number. Tomorrow morning, someone will bring breakfast and a list of nearby schools. No rush. Breathe tonight. She stared at it, smiling in disbelief. She set the phone down and stretched her legs out on the floor, every muscle aching with release instead of strain. She thought of how fast life could pivot when someone decided you mattered. It wasn't luck. It was grace wearing a disguise. She whispered thank you to the empty house, though she wasn't sure who she meant. The stranger, Marcus, the driver, the invisible web of people who had seen her even when she didn't know she was visible. Maybe all of them. Maybe herself for surviving long enough to reach this. The next morning smelled of coffee and cinnamon. Noah clattered down the stairs barefoot, his grin loose and sleepy. They ate pastries on the kitchen floor, legs crossed, laughter echoing in rooms not yet filled with furniture. Sunlight spilled through the big front windows like the house had been waiting to wake up. After breakfast, Elena walked to the small back garden. Frost rimed the grass, fragile but shining. She stood there barefoot, feeling the cold bite and the warmth rise in her chest. For years, her life had been made of what she could endure. Now, for the first time, it felt like it could be made of what she chose. The first days in the new house passed like a soft unfolding. Elena kept expecting the floor to vanish under her feet, but it held, solid and warm. She hung Noah's space posters on his walls, fixed the squeak in the upstairs door, and labeled kitchen shelves with neat scraps of masking tape. The quiet here felt like it belonged to them, not like it was waiting to evict them. Every morning, sunlight touched the stairwell first, as if the house were greeting them before the world could intrude. A week later, she returned to Kensington Memorial for her first shift since the night of the limo. The hospital smelled the same: bleach, coffee, stubborn hope. But something inside her had shifted, like a locked joint gently releasing. She walked the pediatric wing with a new steadiness, the way someone might walk a bridge after realizing it was stronger than it looked. Bree squealed when she saw her. Mr. Dalton demanded to know if she had brought donuts, and the other nurses traded her knowing smiles. She didn't mention the house or the program. She only worked, quietly, fully, as she always had. At the end of the shift, Dr. Morales cornered her at the charting station. "Hart, you're glowing. It's unsettling." "Maybe I finally got enough sleep," she said, smiling. "You didn't," he replied, "but keep doing whatever this is." She left the hospital at sunset. The cold air tasted clean, like it had been filtered through possibility. She walked only a block before a familiar black limo pulled to the curb. The driver stepped out, tipping his cap. "Miss Hartwell is expecting you." She blinked. "You mean Mr. Hartwell?" "No," the driver said, eyes kind. "His mother." The car carried her to a quiet estate just outside the city, where the sky opened wider and the air smelled faintly of pine. The house was old but graceful, its windows glowing like lanterns. Inside, a silver-haired woman waited by the fire, her posture regal and her eyes gentle as warm steel. "Elena," she said, her voice like a cello. "I'm Lillian Hartwell." Elena shook her hand, nerves fluttering. "It's an honor." "The honor is ours," Lillian replied. "You saved my son in ways he will never admit out loud. Marcus lived years thinking the world only took. You reminded him it can give." Elena's throat tightened. "He saved me." "Good," Lillian said simply. "Then this works." She gestured to a low table where folders lay in neat rows. "These are the first 10 candidates, other quiet heroes. We want you to help choose them." Elena froze. "Me? Who better?" Lillian's smile deepened. "You know what it looks like when someone keeps going, even when nothing pushes them but love." Elena sat slowly. The folders' names blurred through her tears. Bus driver, cafeteria worker, a night shift janitor who wrote poetry in the margins of his checklists. She thought of how invisible her own life had felt, how heavy it was to keep moving when no one saw, and how one night someone had. She chose 3 names that evening, her hands steady. When she returned home, Noah was waiting on the porch with his shoes untied and a paint streak on his cheek. "I drew our house for school," he said proudly, waving a paper. "I told them it's magic." "It is," she said, and meant it. Weeks folded into months like pages turning. Elena started her RN classes in the evenings, studying at the kitchen table while Noah built paper rockets on the floor. She worked her shifts with a new light in her voice, like someone humming under her breath. On Saturdays, they painted the garden fence sky blue. Neighbors brought them cookies, stories, and spare furniture that carried histories instead of dust. The house filled slowly with mismatched kindness, and it fit them perfectly. One night in spring, Marcus visited the house for the first time. He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching Noah explain his solar system project with wild hand gestures. "He's brilliant," Marcus murmured. "He's curious," Elena said softly. "I want him to stay that way." "He will," Marcus replied. "He has you." After Noah went to bed, they sat on the back steps. Crickets sang like tiny engines. Elena glanced at Marcus. "Why me?" she asked again, quietly. "Really?" He thought for a long moment. "Because I saw you keep going when most people would have stopped. I wanted Noah to see what happens when the world finally keeps up with someone like that." The moonlight made everything gentle. Elena exhaled. "I used to think my life was about surviving. And now? Now I think it's about choosing," she said. "And I'm choosing to stay." Marcus smiled, not the kind that posed for photographs, but the kind that opened like a door. They sat there until the night grew soft around them. By summer, the garden bloomed in wild colors. Noah built a reading nook in the attic with strings of lights and old quilts. Elena finished her bridge program, walked across the stage in borrowed heels, and saw Noah in the audience holding a sign that said, "My mom is unstoppable." She laughed until she cried, then cried until she laughed again. On her first official day as an RN, she left the house before dawn. The street was quiet, washed in pale gold. A black limo waited at the curb, as it had once before, but this time she only smiled at it. She walked past, steady and sure, her bag light on her shoulder. The driver tipped his cap through the window. She lifted a hand, not to stop, but to wave. As she turned the corner, the sun struck the windows of her house, setting them blazing like fire caught in glass. Noah stood inside at the top of the stairs, waving through the glow. Elena waved back and thought, "This is how stories change. Not with magic, not with luck, but with someone who keeps walking until hope finally finds where they live." And then she walked on, toward the hospital, toward the world, toward everything. So she once walked miles just to survive. Now, every step she takes leads her home, because hope always finds its way back. Subscribe for more heart-touching true stories. Thanks for watching.